Good afternoon and welcome to our second week of online writing. As you remember from last week, we were working on narrative writing, meaning we were either telling true stories, such as maybe a trip or a vacation you have taken, or we were writing fiction stories or made up. This past week, we've been looking at fiction or response to literature, which means you're writing your own version of a popular story. Now you remember that last week we focused on the story, The Three Little Pigs. This week we're going to write a new response to literature piece, and how we're going to do that is we're going to focus on our 4 steps. Number 1, we need to tap the prompt, meaning we need to figure out what the prompt is asking us to do. Number 2, you need to be able to brainstorm the details, meaning you're trying to think of ideas to paint a picture in your reader's mind. 3, you're going to draft the paragraph. And then 4, you're going to edit and take a peek at your spelling and if the sentences make sense. So let's get started with tapping the prompt. So here's your prompt, and I'm going to read it 2 times. Pretend you are the gingerbread man from the popular folktale. What would you do differently in the story? So I'll read it one more time. Pretend you are the gingerbread man from the popular folktale. What would you do differently in the story? So I remember that when tapping that prompt, I'm thinking about what is it asking me to do. So it looks like I'm pretending I'm the gingerbread man. And I remember in that story, he escapes from the grandma's oven and he meets a bunch of animals that want to eat him. In the end, the fox gobbles him up. So knowing that, I need to think, if I were him, what would I do differently in the story? So let's look at some ideas that I put on a slide deck for you. Maybe what I could have done differently is, what if I popped out of the oven and I went to the beach? Or I decided to go hiking in the forest, and instead of the animals wanting to eat me, what if I became their friends? I could also have met other gingerbread men, and together we could have created a gingerbread village and built a house. So feel free to pause this film and think, what would you do differently? All right, now that you've had some time to pause the film, it's time for us to write our details down. Now, I've included these details also on your circle map, which is in your Google Classroom. But I printed mine because I like to be able to write out. It's a little easier for me. So here's my circle map. And in my circle map, I remember I was talking about being who for a day? The gingerbread man. And because I'm a girl, I'm going to write gingerbread woman. So I'm going to say gingerbread woman. Now, I've written down who I am. I'm going to take a peek now at some of my ideas. Maybe one of the things is I made friends. So when I'm doing these details, it's important that I don't write full sentences, but rather just words that I can bounce ideas off of. So I'm going to say, made friends. Notice how I used a past tense verb because I'm telling a story that already happened. Made friends. Ooh, I could choose the forest picture and say maybe I went hiking. So I can say hiked because it's past tense. Hiked. Last but not least, because I'm going to do 3 details for my 3 detail slots on my flame map, I'm going to say I built a house. So I'm going to say built a house. Now once again, remember, I'm not using complete sentences at this point because I'm just kind of writing down the ideas. And then you need at least 3 of them because when you flip your paper over, you will notice that there are 3 detail spots. So you may pause the film and brainstorm those 3 details and write them on your circle map. Now you can either type them in on the Google drawing that I provided for you, or you can print it like I did and write it in. All right, now that we've gone over our details, we've completed 2 steps so far. We tap the prompt and we brainstorm the details. Now it's time to draft the paragraph. So let's go a little bit ahead. So when I draft the paragraph, I know I need to start with a topic sentence to introduce my readers to my writing. So I can do the following. I can say, once upon a time, I once, one day let me tell you about. Now, I remember from the prompt that I was supposed to be the gingerbread man, or in my case, because I'm a girl, the gingerbread woman. And so when looking at these topic sentence stems, I think I'm going to go with the first one this time, once upon a time. So I'm going to go back to my flea map now, and you guys remember that the very first box, so here's the big view of it, I'm going to zoom back in, the very first box is where I write my topic sentence. So I'm going to write once upon, notice I'm using my best handwriting, and additionally I'm making sure I have finger spaces so people can read what I'm writing. So once upon a time, I need that comma, right? Because we see that in my sentence stem. So once upon a time, I was the, and then I'm going to capitalize gingerbread woman because that is a proper noun, because that's my name. Gingerbread. Gingerbread. Notice that soft G in there. Woman. And I'm going to capitalize the W too because that's part of my title. Once again, I'm going to read it just real quick to make sure it makes sense. Once upon a time, I was a gingerbread woman. That looks good. And I have a capital O right here and a period at the end. Now your job is, and I've included this in your slide deck, to choose one of the sentence stems and fill it in. So you could say, once upon a time I was a gingerbread man. I once was a gingerbread man. One day maybe I woke up as a gingerbread man. Or let me tell you about being the gingerbread man. So pause the film and think, what topic sentence do you want to use to introduce your reader to your story? All right, now that we've introduced our reader to the story, it's time for us to plan our detail and our juicy detail. Now, I have a special recipe for my details, and here it is. So we always start our detail with a transition word, which is first, next, lastly. Then we move on to a who or what, and finally, an action or description. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to model this process for you. This means that you can feel free to pause the film whenever you need and listen closely. So, let's begin. So I know that we planned my ideas on my circle map. So I see, I'm going to choose the first one. How about hiked? And notice it's just a word. So I'm going to circle hiked. Now, I know that is not a sentence. So, what I need to do is I need to go back to my formula with my transition word, my who or what, or my action and description. So let's listen to this. What if I said, first, I hiked in the forest? That is a complete sentence. So it makes sense. So I'm going to go back over here, and using that formula, I'm going to start my transition word. So I'm going to write first, then a comma that comes after my transition word. I hiked in the forest. Period. So now to really make sure that I wrote my sentence completely, I need to look at my sentence checklist. And I have 3 pieces of criteria that I'm looking for. Number 1, I started my sentence with a capital letter. Number 2, my sentence has an ending mark. And finally, number 3, does my sentence make sense? So let's go through my checklist. Number 1, did I start my sentence with a capital letter? I see my F is capital here, so we're good. Number 2, does my sentence have an ending mark? Go in here and I see a period. Finally, number 3, does my sentence make sense? I'm going to whisper read it just to double check. First, I hiked in the forest. Yeah, that worked out great. So now it's going to be your turn, and you can pause the film before we go on to how to write a juicy detail. All right, friends, so now we're ready to go into juicy detail territory. And just like our sentences, our juicy details also have some rules. And here are my rules for juicy details. Number 1, the juicy detail needs to match the detail. Meaning if I'm writing about hiking in the forest, chances are I'm probably not going to talk about swimming in a swimming pool. But I could talk about what I see in the forest or what I do in the forest. Number 2, I need to make sure still, is my juicy detail a complete sentence? And very importantly is step 3 for you first graders who are almost second graders. It does not use boring adjectives. No more fun, cool, or good.